What an extraordinary place. This amazing chateau, its forests, its location, the feeling of energy from the ancient stone. The chateau speaks to you. There is nothing like it anywhere in the world. What could have inspired man to have a vision like this and then to build such an incredible structure, yet alone have the technology to do so? Château Rouffillac is truly one of the most inspirational structures anywhere in the world. Its fairy tale turrets, serene courtyards, sumptuous and extravagant rooms, mystical forests, and of course, the amazing view of the Dordogne River and valley make it absolutely unique and extraordinary. But what made it all happen and why? What is the history of this amazing place? It all began in the 13th century. France's southwest region power was very unstructured, with many baronies and fiefdoms, and 6 families decided to come together to create a powerhouse in the region and to build an inspiring structure right on the hillside. This hillside was deemed to be spiritual, with its many water springs and ancient ley lines that traverse it. These families were a powerful clan and became known as the Lords of Rouffillac. In fact, inside the chateau in the bibliothèque, the coat of arms of each of these families is painted on the ceiling joists, and the stained glass windows in the downstairs salle à manger and grand salon also have these coat of arms. Because of this statement this family wanted to make, it's no accident this chateau was built on a hillside for all to see from miles away. About 100 years later, in the 14th and 15th century, a terrible war broke out. A war so bad that it lasted over 100 years and became known as the 100-Year War. The chateau played a large role in this 100 Years' War. This war was a dispute between the French and English royal families deciding who should be king of the region. The southern warfront was the Dordogne River. Given its location, Château Rouffillac ended up on the front lines of the war. And as the English and French fought for the territory, for a number of years the English would occupy Château Rouffillac, and then when the French executed its offensive, they would overrun the English, and then they would occupy the chateau. And so for 116 years, the chateau oscillated back and forth between the English and French. Usually, when this happened, either side would destroy any example of the enemy's presence and culture, but remarkably at Rouffillac they didn't. In fact, they mutually built on it. As a result, there are many elements all over the chateau that show these different influences. Here, in the salle à manger, the floor has the fleur-de-lis French influence tiles, whilst on the walls we have the stenciled St. George dragon from the English. This makes the structure completely unique, with an English and French influence throughout the ages. This turret, a small walk from the chateau through the hillside, is strategically located. It was used as an observation point to monitor army movements in the valley. Just above the chateau on top of the hill was a thriving city called Château. In the center of this city is an ancient Roman church. The Romans built a road that traverses the top of Rouffillac Forest. The whole mountain was deemed to be spiritual, and the church was built on a mystical ley line that the ancients discovered. The ruins of the church are still there to this day. But then in the 16th century in France, another war erupted between the Catholics and Protestants. There was a famous battle of Coutras where thousands were slaughtered. Many of the surviving army came over to Rouffillac. These marauders would constantly attack Château, so much so that the entire city left and moved to Carlou, a few kilometers away. Carlou has a large fortress which afforded protection to the villagers. And as you can see, slowly the entire city became dilapidated and overgrown and forgotten. You can see the remains of the church here, and all the walls and the roads are overgrown. It became known as the lost city of Château. in the 17th century, the chateau was acquired by the de Rouffillac family, a small but noble one in the region. In 1737, the property was then sold to Adrien de Noailles, the most powerful duke in the region, famous for his exploits in many strategic battles in Prussia, Spain, and all over France. He married the Duchy of Agen, the second most powerful royal family in France. Rouffillac was now owned by the French nobility. But after many years of wealth and intrigue, the chateau became abandoned at the beginning of the French Revolution as all the nobility fled for their lives. During the French Revolution of 1789, the chateau became occupied by nuns, a sect from Sarlat, known as the Ladies of the Faith of Sarlat. Because there were many springs and rock pools in the mountain, they grew fish in the many ponds. Some of those still exist today, and in fact, Rouffillac's swimming pool is built on one of them. They also created a garden a short walk from the first hillside, which today is completely overgrown. During this time, poverty was rife across the whole region, and most people were starving. So the nuns would walk down the hill and feed the fish to the starving people. They became known as the nuns from the sky and were revered by the local population. The nuns finally left after the revolution, and the property became owned by the state. In the 19th century, Rouffillac's was used to entertain interesting people from around the world. One of these people was the ambassador from the United States to France. Thomas Jefferson was the president of the United States at that time. The ambassador loved the chateau so much he would spend his summers there. It is believed that the ambassador was Robert Livingston, who was also one of the signers of the United States Declaration of Independence. In Rouffillac's bibliothèque, he wrote his letters to Thomas Jefferson whilst the United States was negotiating with France to acquire the Louisiana territories from Napoleon. That desk is still inside the bibliothèque to this day. And then, in 1850, Count Montmellier acquired the property. These were a family of doctors and lawyers. Arthur Montmellier was a well-known scientist and ophthalmologist. He was also a famous photographer. Count Montmellier expanded the chateau by adding the Renaissance fairy tale turrets on the south side. It became known as the Fairy Tale Madness Chateau. He was loved in the region, and he commissioned the University of Bordeaux Archaeology Department to study the city of Cadéot and the ancient Roman church in the Rouffillac forest. The book exists in the Bordeaux Library to this day. When Arthur passed away, his son took over the property and completed the work. His son was born into privilege and did not understand economics. He married a California woman, and the two of them became notorious for holding wild parties. The palm trees at Rouffillac's to this day are a remnant of the California influence on the chateau. They lived well above their means and finally ended up overextending and bankrupt. The chateau became abandoned. In 1954, Pierre-Paul Grasset acquired and restored the chateau. He was a very famous academician of sciences. Pierre-Paul was a director general of the Sorbonne, one of the most famous and prestigious universities in France. He authored the most advanced books in entomology and specifically termites, which till this day is the definitive encyclopedia for termites. He was also deeply fascinated with archaeology and acquired many Egyptian mummies and other Sumerian artifacts that he showed in the bibliothèque. He labeled all his books and in an indexing system in the bibliothèque, which exists to this day. He restored the chateau, added 3 toilets and some bathrooms. When he passed away, his daughter managed the chateau until its acquisition by an Anglo-American couple in 2019. They renovated the chateau in a no-expense-spared manner and have made it a 6-star property, adding luxury ensuite bathrooms for every suite, a complex operation in an ancient building with 6 feet stone walls, also a gym, wellness center, and many other luxury mod-coms. Today, the chateau stands as majestically as it ever has, high Over the Dordogne Valley, it stands proud, defiant, and beautiful. The structure is so extraordinary that we are frequently asked, how can someone own such a property of presence? And our response is simple: we don't. We simply caretake it in our lifetime, and then when we are gone, Rouffillac moves on to the next caretaker, and so it will go through the millennia, transcending man. Man is mortal, but Rouffillac will live forever. It is said the current owners talk to the chateau and the forest, and they talk back. We don't know what they are saying, but the energy is strong and extraordinarily positive. This is a serene and happy place. Château Rouffillac.